Hi guys, Steven Chung from the Tokyo Aquascaping Union. Today I'm bringing you an actual blitz layout session. A blitz layout session is when you get 5 minutes to do a 45 to 60 centimeter tank. In this case I'm taking 15 to do a 90 centimeter one, but we use only wood and stone. This is a pretty common practice technique for people new to the TAU, which at this point is just myself. But the idea is that if you can handle putting together a layout with no sand, without any added assistance except just rock and stone, if you're able to put something together in that rapid time with just those limitations, then you pretty much got the skills that you need to make an effective layout for a contest in a bigger scale, taking time and using sand. I am speeding this up a bit since I don't want to have you guys sitting through minutes and minutes of looking at my back. This is the best angle that I could do to take the video from. But what I'm doing here is I'm setting up the first main piece of the layout. Now there are some things to pay attention to here. When you set up, you typically want to start with the biggest piece of layout material. Like that's either the biggest piece of stone or the biggest piece of wood as a general rule, which is what I've done here. It's really important to create the foundational base of the layout and build off from there. But when you're setting wood, you typically want to put the wood in the end position and then figure out how the other hardscape pieces are going to fit around it. This is a pretty typical technique when you're going through a blitz, but also it's important. It's the same process that you think through when putting together most designs. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule. Fukada-san also likes to think about creating the base and then building on top of the base. But there are two fundamental ways to look at this. You either pick the biggest piece and then put it into place and build the base around it, or you can build the main base and then use that as the foundation for the rest of the layout. Here I've decided to work with wood and work with a very provocative piece of wood coming forward, so I decided to stabilize that first and build the other pieces around it. Now you notice that I'm putting in the second piece here where I've already managed to fit it. In the foreground there's a log that's falling back. I think that this is a very good counterbalance to the piece that I originally set, because there's kind of a circular flow from back to front and back again. There's also a high contrast. The initial piece is very dark and casts a shadow, whereas the second piece that I put together is light. And you'll notice that the second piece is actually several pieces of driftwood that have been fit together. Before you start a blitz, you typically organize the piece that you're going to work with, and I kind of grabbed things that I knew would work together and piece them together in a way that looks like an interesting set piece of wood, and then stabilize those pieces together with smaller stones. Similar to what I'm doing right here, the third piece is another piece of wood that's being stood up. There are a couple points to this. You'll notice that there's that one point that's sticking up over my head right now. I'm actually trying to take the goal of making that wood point back towards the center and the back of the layout, so that the natural flow that goes from the log that I've set in the foreground takes you into the background. It's like a flow of water. Also, you'll note that by my hand, or below my hand, there's a piece of wood that's sticking out towards the bottom left corner of the layout. This is another visual line and helps balance the overall flow, and it also has the semblance of roots, right? Or it has the resemblance of roots. So one typical good piece of advice when putting together a layout is to think about the foundation first. I think we've mentioned the foundation several times during this explanation already, but those last details, the really interesting things, or in Japanese we say it's tsukurikomi, or building in the details. That is the final piece of the cake. And typically you want to endure the temptation to work into those details until the very end. When you're able to create a layout that really expresses itself even without those details, like see, we're looking at it right now. When you're able to do that, then you don't need to rely on all the little bits and pieces. You've already set up something that has impact, that has balance, that has all the key foundational elements that go into good design. So you see I've endured the temptation, and here I'm starting to put in all the interesting little bits, whether it's roots or added pieces or things that probably won't end up fitting in the layout. And see, you'll notice that I was just playing with that really straight piece of wood, but I decided not to use it because it's kind of foreign and alien compared to everything else. One aspect of good design is to shy away from introducing things that are alien to the rest of the layout. You want to use pieces that work together, that have the same vibe going. They feel natural when put together, and that's what I'm working with right now. You've noticed that the piece that I'm working on goes into the background right now, so again, it's working on the flow from front to back, the natural progression that I talked about in some of my earlier videos. And you can see that there's that balance between dark and light, right? The initial piece I set is very dark and casts a strong shadow, whereas the piece in the background is obviously really light. This is completely intentional. So now we're simply working on the last details and last pieces in order to create distance. During the actual layout, not speeding through it, I used 13 minutes, so I had 2 minutes to spare within a 15-minute time slot. Ideally, you'd be able to do this even faster. Most of the other TAU members would probably be able to get this up in 8 minutes. So, still working on my own speed. Right, I mean, you know, as I said, if it were one of the other TAU members, they'd probably have finished this in like 8 minutes or less, 6 minutes or less. If it was Watanabe-san, he would do it in 3. Anyway, unfortunately, I didn't record anywhere past that, but I did take photos, so we can discuss the final results from there. I did up the contrast and the colors a bit on this so that we could have a more easy to discuss photo, more easy to look at the different points and unpack this and point out the important things. I think that you notice that the light and dark elements I worked to create are very prominent. Obviously the main piece of wood has a very distinct shadow, and it's a strong visual element that contrasts very well with the center foreground piece of wood. It's a log stuck in the mud that has been falling back into the mire. This whole layout has a very swampy like swampy marsh type of feeling to it, which is what I was going for. I think the individual small pieces of roots contribute a lot to this, but if there's one thing that I want people to take away from this, those types of details wouldn't really be able to do their job if they weren't in an overall structure that allowed them to really speak up. You know, the main foundation is what provides the different contrasting elements, the different visual lines, the real base foundation of where this story is and where it's going. I worked hard in order to lay pieces of wood that would be able to show a flow of water, that would be able to show a direction of movement. I think like even the front foreground left hand side piece of wood that I was talking about earlier, it's placed diagonally and goes from the bottom left hand corner aiming towards the center. There are other visual elements that move towards the center. They kind of counterbalance each other, and you feel like it takes off your natural sense of water moving into the background from the foreground. That type of thing is really critical in order to pay attention to when you're putting in the foundation. And when you have that in place, then the smaller details begin to really, they have an opportunity to speak up and really say something meaningful. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this blitz. Maybe it'll give you some insight into what I do in order to practice. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are more interested in seeing me work with actual wood and stone as opposed to messing around in Photoshop. I'll try to keep that in mind and bring more of this type of content to you in the future. Anyway, keep posted. There'll be more sketches, more analysis pieces, more things to come. Take it easy.